So any questions from vMotion? Yesterday we discussed about vMotion, moving a powered on VM from one host to another host. Okay. This will be vMotion. Files will be in the same data store. We're not changing the files location, only VM location will be changed. Okay. Files will be in the same data store. So today, and we have understood the purpose of the vMotion as well, why we need to do vMotion for planned maintenance activity. So next migration is SVmotion. So moving virtual machine files from one data store to another data store. This is SVmotion. Storage vMotion. In this case, VM will be here only. We are not touching the VM. Only the files location will be moved from one data store to another data store. Okay, from here to here we will move. So we'll try to understand the purpose of this SVmotion and how we do this. So maintain threshold limit on the data store. Move the VMs to another SAN array. Two reasons. We should not utilize the data stores more than 80%. If this percentage, you can decide yourself. Normally, in industry preferred value is 80%. Nobody will cross more than 80% usage of the data store. Okay. Let's say what will happen if you use 100% data store usage. The virtual machines trying to place some data here on the data store and there is no place now. 100% data store is utilized. Whichever the machine which is trying to place data here will stop writing the data. That means this will be hung. Whichever the machine trying to place some data here, that machine will stop placing the data. That means the machine will go to hung state. It will not respond because there is no space here to place new data. It cannot process any new data. When it stops, the business application will be impacted. To avoid that, we have to always maintain some free space. So that free space will be any value. Normally the industry preferred value is 80%. You can set it to 75 or 90, whatever it is. So if you cross 80% of the data store capacity, we will be getting alarms. Okay, alarm will trigger from the vCenter, and once you get an alarm from email or a ticket, whatever it is. Okay, once you get an email about the data store usage, you go and just be SVmotion data from one data store to another data store. Okay, So if you leave it, it will reach 100% and there will be business impact. To avoid that, once it crosses 80% or 70%, whatever the value that we set, it's called threshold limit. We set it on the alarm definitions, not on the data store. We just define it on the vCenter definitions. So if you see here, configuration, alarm definition. In this alarm, it is defined more than 85% critical alert, more than 75% warning alert. Based on the alarm that we define, we'll discuss about these alarms. Okay. So once vCenter notices any of the data store here, which is listed here, more than its 80% of its capacity is utilized. Okay. Free space is less than 20% of the capacity. Then it will automatically send an alarm to your email or ticketing system, whatever. Once you get it, you always go and check this data store, move some virtual machines from one data store to another data store. That is one reason. Second one, move completely data to another SAN array. Like the SAN array which we are using right now is, let's say, very old. Your company has purchased new SAN array and storage team will create LUNs here. We will create data stores. Same as how we did here, we will do the same. Once the new SAN array is connected to the storage switches, they'll create LUN, joining and masking. Then we will create as a data store. Now this ESXi host can see the data stores from this old SAN array and new SAN array as well. Okay. And now customer is asking you to vacate this old SAN array. You can migrate from here to here using the same SVmotion without downtime. SVmotion is powered on VM files itself, we are moving. So no downtime here. When the VM is running itself, completely from one SAN array to another SAN array, we can move the data using SVmotion. Fine. Okay. So in this case, the ESXi host can see both the data stores. So it will move from old data stores to new data stores. VM will be still on the same host. Fine. These are the two use cases for SVmotion. Real-time scenarios that we may need to use SVmotion. Fine. So minimum requirements we'll see. If you want to perform this live migration, what are the minimum requirements we need? There are no major requirements. There should be enough free space on the data store. Only one requirement. There should be enough free space. That's it. If you are planning to move some data from here to here, there should be some free space. Let's say this data store is 1000 GB capacity. Already, let's say 700 GB is utilized. Okay. So remaining we have 300 GB only. If you are trying to move a virtual machine, two hard disks are there for a virtual machine. If you migrate this virtual machine, 200 GB virtual machine, from this hard disk, from this data store to this data store, it will become 200 GB, right? So virtual machine is having 200 GB of disk space. So 700 plus 200, 900. While migrating, it will not show you any warning or alert, anything like that. If you move, it will become 900 only. So it is having enough free space. Total it will become 900 out of 1000 GB. But the problem is this data store will trigger alert again. Right? Because more than 80%, more than 800 GB, this data here alert will clear. Here it will trigger new alert again. Again, you need to SVmotion from one data store to another data store. Okay. So that we have to manually calculate it. Just a subtraction, right? There is no complicated calculation. It's just a subtraction. How much data you are moving from one data store to another data store. If you move that much data, will the destination data store will trigger alert again or not? That only you need to check and migrate. There will be definitely one data store with enough free space. Okay, so it will be there for free. So the only thing you should check is enough free space on the destination data store. Even after moving this much data, it should not trigger alert again. Fine. So if it triggers alert again you have to do SVmotion. It will be double work for you. So only you have to see like how much you are moving. If you move so much, will it trigger alert again or not? Only thing you have to check. Fine. Next, we'll see how to SVmotion. Select virtual machine, right click on it, select migrate option, select change storage only, select destination data store, compatibility, click on OK. So if you follow this navigation, the VM will be migrated from one data store to another data store. Fine. So they will ask in interviews, normally they will ask, I have a virtual machine on one SAN array. I want to migrate it to another SAN array. Is it possible? It's a completely different storage. Okay. So definitely it is possible. Only just we have to do SVmotion, the virtual machine. But this SAN array should be connected to the same servers. If it is visible on the E6I1 and 2, we can do SVmotion. Fine. And also some other interviewers will ask about, I have a virtual machine on my ESXi local hard disk. I want to migrate this. By mistake, I have created a virtual machine on the local hard disk. I want to migrate this virtual machine to the remote data store or SAN array data store. Okay. Is it possible? From local data store to SAN data store using SVmotion. Yes, it's possible. Same SVmotion. There is no change. Okay. The same SVmotion will work. From local data store to remote storage, or from one SAN array to another SAN array. SVmotion only we will do. Okay. Fine. So it's possible from local data store to shared data store, remote data store. And here, if you see the problem here itself, this virtual machine, you are moving 200 GB. If you move this 200 GB to the another data store, it is crossing threshold limit again. Okay, it will cross more than 80% on this data store. So for some reason, these are the only two data stores connected as of now to the ESXi host. I want to adjust between these two data stores only. Is it possible here? I have only two data stores. One is already triggered an alert. I want to move some data from data store 1 to data store 2. Data store 2 is already 700 GB utilized. Only 300 GB is free. If you move this entire VM, 200 GB will be migrated from here to here. Here alert will clear, but here it will trigger again. I don't want to trigger the alert again here, but still I want to reduce the usage on the data store 1. Looking at these numbers, is it possible? Same example here. Yes, how? Only these two data stores I have. Any idea? So if you move this entire VM, two hard disks are there, 50 GB hard disk and 150 GB hard disk. If you move this normally SVmotion, if you do, okay, entire both the hard disks will be migrated from here to here. If you don't want to trigger the alert again on the destination data store, move only 50 GB hard disk. Instead of moving the 200 GB hard disk, move only this 50 GB hard disk from here to here. Here also the alert will trigger clear, and here it will become 700 plus 50, 750 only. Alert will not trigger here also because it is not reaching 80%. Okay, so we can adjust that. Calculations we have to do manually, just minus only, right? Total how much you want to migrate, just split accordingly. So if you do this vMotion, normally the entire VM will migrate. So if you want to do single hard disk, it's called advanced SVmotion, but from the same navigation we can do. It's called advanced SVmotion. Select virtual machine, right click on it, migrate, change storage only, click on per disk, configure per disk. Here you can see. Select hard disk, select destination data store, next, and finish. If you follow this navigation, individual hard disk of the virtual machine will be migrated. Okay. Single hard disk, only 50 GB hard disk, we will migrate from here to here. Now the entire VM, all VMX, VMDK files will be on one data store. Okay. Another hard disk will be in another data store. Only one file will be migrated to the second data store. It's recommended, okay, it is allowed and recommended also, not a problem. If you have one hard disk in one data store, another hard disk in another data store, there will be no problem. Okay? No performance issues, nothing like that. It is allowed. It gives the same performance. So some interviews they will be asking, I have a virtual machine with two hard disks. Is it possible to place one hard disk in one data store, another hard disk in another data store? Yes, it's possible with SVmotion. Will there be any impact? No impact. Okay. As usual, it will be running. We'll see now, like if we will migrate one of the virtual machine, I'll build one small VM with the two hard disks quickly. I'll build on this data store. Two GB one and 5 GB one, two data stores. Right now the virtual machine is created, and if you look at the data store, it is an iSCSI lab data store. Right click on it, edit settings, hard disk 1 and hard disk 2. If you expand here, you can see in which data store it is stored. iSCSI lab. Okay. Hard disk 2, iSCSI lab in the same data store. If you go to VM options, expand general, here you can see it is also in the iSCSI lab data store. So entire virtual machine is located in this data store, iSCSI lab data store. Okay. If I want to migrate it to different data store, right click. When the VM is powered on and running itself, we can migrate. So right click, migrate, change storage only. If you select first one, it's vMotion. If you select second one, it's SVmotion. Okay. Next, select the destination data store. Lab space SVIT data store. Okay, the entire VM will be migrated now. Next, and finish. Right now here itself it is showing the data store name. It will update once it is completed. completed now. So it is updated its name as well, lab SVIT. If you go to edit settings and you can verify it also. No need to verify, but still if you want to check, you can check from here. It is changed from one data store to another data store. But in this case, both the hard disk also moved. Okay, normal SVmotion. If you want to change only one hard disk, right click here, migrate, change storage only. Next, here configure per disk. Click on here. Individual hard disk will be displayed here, and all other files .vmx, nvram, log file, everything will become one file, configuration file, and individual hard disk, one hard disk will be one file. It will display here. So if I want to move only this hard disk, here browse, select iSCSI lab. This will be in this data store, and only this hard disk will move to this location. Next, and finish. So one hard disk and configuration file will be here in this data store. Another hard disk only will be migrated to another data store. Now it will display both the data stores here. If you select a VM and go to data stores, you can see both the data stores. That means the VM is located in both the data stores. If you right click, browse files, the test VM, you can see all other files are here. Okay, .nvram, vmx, one of the vmdk is located here. If you select another data store, that VM will be here also, that folder will be here, but only one hard disk is located here. Okay, only one hard disk is here, all other files are in another data store. When the VM is running itself, you can migrate. It's called advanced SVmotion. Only you have to adjust the numbers manually, just a subtraction thing. Okay, there is no complicated calculations involved. Only you have to see how much you are moving. Once you move that much, will it trigger alert again or not? That's the only point you need to keep in mind. If you move so much data, will it trigger alert again here or not? Okay. You have to migrate again. Normally, I would recommend you to do, if a data store is triggered an alert, select the data store, go to virtual machines tab here, see what are all the virtual machines located. Out of which, if you want to make some free space, right, prefer powered off VMs first. Powered off VMs. Okay. If there are no powered off VMs, prefer small VMs, 50 GB, 100 GB VMs. See, first of all, how much space you need to reduce this data store. See here, total 50 GB, 20% of it, how much you want to migrate. See that much, just above or below VMs are available or not. First you look for power of VMs, then look for smaller VMs, then go for advanced SVmotion. Small hard disk. First prefer to move powered off VMs, then prefer to move small VMs, 50 GB, 100 GB, how much you want to vacate. Try to move those VMs, and then go, if it is not available, then go for bigger VMs with individual hard disk. Just do SVmotion of VMs with small disks. Just you aim to reduce some space here so that alert will clear here, and another data store also is not filling up. Okay, try to adjust accordingly. Any questions from SVmotion? Daily 3-4 times you may need to do this. Moving a powered on virtual machine files from one data store to another data store. SVmotion. Move a VM from one host to another host is vMotion. Okay. Why we need to do SVmotion? If data stores are crossing threshold limit, or if you want to migrate completely to new array, or local hard disk to the shared storage. Any of these three use cases. Okay. You can do SVmotion. Without SVmotion means no business impact. VM will be up and running itself. Fine. VM will be up and running. You will be migrating from one data store to another data store. You don't need to worry about the minimum requirements. There should be enough free space. You need to know how much you are moving, how much you want to migrate to clear the alert, and if you move so much here to the destination, will it trigger alert again or not? ఓన్లీ ఆ ఒక పాయింట్ మీరు మైండ్లో పెట్టు. ఇక్కడి నుంచి ఎంత క్లియర్ చేయాలి, ఎంత మూవ్ చేస్తే అలర్ట్ క్లియర్ అవుతుంది, ఆ సేమ్ అమౌంట్ ఇక్కడికి మూవ్ చేస్తే ఇక్కడ ఏమన్నా మళ్ళీ అలర్ట్ వస్తుందా? How much you want to move to clear the alert here, and if you move so much to the destination, will it create alert again or not? Okay, then move it accordingly. First prefer powered off VMs, then smaller VMs 50 GB 100 GB, then go for advanced SVmotion small disks. Migrating, just right click. Daily 3-4 times you need to do. Just try to do some calculation and try to adjust accordingly. So practice if need. Advanced SVmotion and vMotion. Fine. So as of now we did vMotion separately, SVmotion separately. If you want to do together at a time, move both at a time. It's possible. You need to select the third option, and there is no specific name. It's called live migration only. There is no specific name like vMotion or SVmotion. Move a powered on VM and its files together to the destination host and data store at a time. Okay. If you move both at a time from one host to another host, data store to data store, it is possible, and it's called live migration only. Okay. So here select this test VM. Right now it is on ESXi host. Which host it is there? No other host available. Migrate. Select the third one. Change both host and data store together. Both together it will come. vMotion and SVmotion pages will come together. Next, select destination data store. Host and data store together you can change. Okay. It's called live migration. Okay, there is no specific name for it. It's just called same like vMotion. We call it as live migration. Clear? Any question as of now? Okay, powered off VMs normally okay, I'm just saying to avoid some issues, like say if you by mistake if you select virtual machine which doesn't support vMotion, unnecessarily you are migrating and business impact will be there. If you do powered off VMs, there will be no, you can avoid most of the issues, like okay, you don't know whether that application running in the VM or does support vMotion or not. If you select powered off VMs, you are very confident. I just moved only powered off VM. There will be no impact. Even though if you move powered on VM, there will be no impact if the application support vMotion. Just to avoid unnecessary issues, I'm referring you to select powered off VMs. You will be very confident that no impact, right? So next one, cold migration. As of now, we have migrated in power on condition. VM host to host and data vMotion and SVmotion, host to host and data store to data store are both together. We did when the VM is running itself. Okay. If you do the same thing, either host to host or data store to data store, all together, both. Okay, it's called cold migration only. Okay, if you move from host to host or data store to data store or both together in power off condition, it's called cold migration. Okay, and now like anybody whoever learns VMware, they will be able to answer what is vMotion, SVmotion, advanced vMotion, cold migration. But very few, even few real-time guys will not be aware of use cases for cold migration. Let's say if I am only asking you, we have a possibility to migrate a VM when they are running itself. Okay, vMotion and SVmotion we can do when the VMs are running itself. Then what are the real-time use cases or situations? You need to do cold migration. Is there any real-time use case for cold migration? Okay. So definitely only few real-time work guys will be aware of it. Otherwise, normally regularly we don't do cold migration. People will not be aware why we need when we have a possibility to migrate in power on condition itself. What are the situations you may need to power off and migrate? Just to test whether you really worked or not. Okay, or you are aware of technical dependencies and all, they will ask questions like this. Okay. First thing, you tell me like you itself like one or two situations you're already aware of it. Yesterday itself we discussed like vMotion requirements. In that there will be two use cases you will get here. If you want to migrate a VM between host with different
Sir,
Hi, sorry, I was on another call. Can you hear me now? Hello, from remote.
Yeah, Anna.
Okay, thanks. If you want to migrate VM, if you have a different processor host, Intel to AMD, AMD to Intel, vMotion is not possible. Only you have to power off and migrate. And second one, sorry, no, network we can change anytime. Network things we can fix. If a VM with uh, application which doesn't support vMotion, some sensitive applications which doesn't support vMotion, we cannot do vMotion. We have to power up and migrate on. Okay. And third one, the VM is in Windows clustering. Okay. SCSI controller. We'll discuss about this SCSI controller later. Shared. There is something called Windows clustering is possible between two operating system inside a virtual machine. VM has a Windows Server 2012, another VM has Windows Server 2012. They make clustering with Windows OS. If a VM is in Windows clustering, okay, is part of Windows cluster, then it's one of its virtual hardware called SCSI controller. If you see the virtual machine here, this is a virtual machine, right? If you go to edit settings, SCSI controller. If you expand it, normally sharing is none. For cluster VMs, if you want to do Windows clustering, it's called Microsoft clustering. Okay? If you want to do Microsoft clustering between two virtual machines, we will share this hard disk. That concept we'll see during advanced topics, okay, if needed. Like this hard disk will be shared. If it is showing as shared, vMotion is not allowed. Okay, we have to shut down and migrate. So that is another reason. Three use cases for a cold migration. Fine. So any questions here? SVmotion and vMotion or even cold migration. So all three type of migration, when we have to pick which one, you should be knowing and should be clear with minimum requirements for vMotion and background process for migration as well. SVmotion, there is no background process. It is like cut and paste technology. Okay, so vMotion has a lot of background process. Any question?